So anyway, our dedicated team of passionate volunteers serve the communities that they literally live in and support the MUFON family globally by conducting local and Zoom meetings and attending seminars and taking continuing education classes right here at MUFON. We actually have a MUFON university set up so that people can study that would like to. And we provide those online certified classes to our members that have taken our tests, not just members, but those who are the field investigators. I want to make sure I say that right so that you don't get it wrong. And we now offer drone training as well. So that's something not too many people are doing, and we're very proud of that. There is always room for advancements with us within MUFON, and we're always looking for new field investigators and new members. Members are our backbone, and we appreciate you all so very much. And this is how we support the many benefits that we provide. And we always welcome any donations from people, anybody that is willing to come on board or have a certain project that they'd like to donate to, like for instance, our Project Aquarius. We have so many different things like that that people can donate to, and we'd love to hear from you. We have boot camp trainings and all kinds of things like that. So the UFO training and certifications that we have are with our field investigators only. So anyway, I just really did want to make sure that I was clear on that. So what an honor it is really for me and all of us here at MUFON to be a part of this great United MUFON team. And that's where the name United MUFON came from, because we all work together as one huge family just all over the planet, literally. And I've been live and interactive since April of 2020 for United MUFON here, right out of our studio at home. And in all this time I've been with MUFON, I've seen this corporation grow and prosper and just absolutely expand with wonderful leaderships and advancements to what we do and how we do it. Thank you for being here today. We have a wonderful afternoon planned, and we have an amazing guest speaker, Shane Hurd, who is the Assistant State Director with Arizona MUFON. So let's get going. And so how do we do what we do here at MUFON? And we're going to cover a little bit about that. And I think I just moved this forward. There we go. Oops, my little thing fell off. So I'm your host today. I'm Terry Lynn Keel. Little technical glitches here and there, but what is MUFON, you might ask? Well, we are the Mutual UFO Network. We were established in 1969. My little thing isn't moving forward. I don't know why. Please be patient with us as we work through these glitches. You know, the thing about technology is it's so amazing when it works. So who we are, we're the largest and oldest UFO investigative organization in the world with a huge member base, adding to it every single day. We're represented in all 50 states and 40 countries with thousands of trained volunteer field investigators and over 50 PhD consultants in most disciplines. I think that's really very impressive. And we do conduct scientific investigations. We were established in 1969, and for the past 52 years, MUFON has compiled a database of over 175,000 UFO reports, and I'm sure that number is a bit lacking. And the CMS, which I mentioned earlier, the case management system, is what we all work off of here, and it was developed in 2006. As MUFON has evolved, we now monitor abduction and entity cases, and there's more than you might think. Now, how do we actually investigate? Well, people have asked me this: computer science, biology, astronomy, physics, chemistry, geology, engineering, and statistics that we look up, and this is how we actually do what we do, and everyone is trained for that. So my little thing is not going forward. But our mission statement is that these are the words that inspire us each and every day. We investigate UFO sightings, abductions, and entity cases. We promote research in UFOs with an eye towards science always. And we educate the public on the UFO phenomenon. We do have a board of directors. Dave McDonald is our executive director. We are so proud to have him aboard. John Schuessler is one of our founding members. And down below, you'll see the different people also that are involved on our board. Tom Whitmore, Terry Linkiel, Debbie Ziegelmeyer, Rob Switek, Richard Beckwith, Sandy Clevin, and Ken as well. And so we thank you so much for being a part of this. This is not just some small little tin hat wearing group of people. These are amazing people that are serving us and working with us. Of all of the UFO reports received, approximately 15% of those are actual real UFOs. The others are simply misidentifications or perhaps optical illusions, stars, planets, hoaxes, and unfortunately hallucinations. That does happen. But what about the remaining 15%? That's actually what brought me to MUFON, and that's the reason for MUFON's existence. You are not alone. If you have had something happen to you, we are very interested in hearing what happened to you. And we have people on board who can help you with any trauma that has happened because of an experience that was really hard to wrap your mind around or just difficult for you to handle. And of course, there's been that giggle factor involved for years, and so many people have such an issue with that. We are not like that. We're here to support you and understand what you've gone through. If you have, like I mentioned, had an experience of any kind, nothing is too bizarre, please go to www.mufon.com. That's the core of our mission, is sharing your stories and understanding what has happened. We have an experiencers research team called the ERT. It's dedicated to helping experiencers of alien contact. And some people just seeing ships or crafts or something like that is frightening. Again, that's why we're here. And we have a director, Gwen Farrell, who is highly certified. And if you're interested in speaking with her, you can take a questionnaire at mufon.com/experiencer and -questionnaire at .hotmail, HTML. So confidentially, we will keep everything under wraps. We don't share your information. Now, recently, I did mention about the unclassified Office of the Director of National Intelligence, who did come on and put out this preliminary assessment, unidentified aerial phenomenon, back on the 25th of June. Unfortunately, they did not bring to us what we had hoped. And yet, I feel very positive. At least it's one step in the right direction in a way. Let's look on the bright side, right? Okay. People are talking about it. It's been out there. People have heard about it that had never heard anything before. So this isn't all bad, even though it isn't what we in ufology had expected or even wanted, but it is what it is, right? So we're good to just have a little bit going. A little bit of MUFON business before we get going. Many of you know that we were previously in California, and we are no longer there. We are now in the Mutual UFO Network of Cincinnati, Ohio, and that is going to be our permanent place. And so it's more centrally located. You can visit there, you can call there, you can join. And we're at the very famous Lunken Airport, which is just a really cool spot. You know, I've been there. It's wonderful. Hangar 1 is there. There actually is a Hangar 1, and it really is a beautiful place. So just know, if you want to, you can still use the old phone numbers to call, and you can still use all the old email addresses. They just go to Cincinnati now. And Project Aquarius, what is it? I mentioned that earlier as well. Well, what it is it's a concept that goes way back to 1975 when the idea of a global accessible UFO database was first discussed. And then finally in 2019, a few years later, the MUFON board approved the project, and now finally we're ready in 2021 to move forward. The only thing we're lacking really are donations to get it moving forward. And so if you are so inclined, please donate to Project Aquarius. You can just go to MUFON.com and speak to someone there, either Hannah or Marquetta, and tell them that you're interested in that. We would so appreciate it. What it is they're reaching out to other organizations to join with MUFON in the development of the largest repository of translatable and accessible UFO data, literally in the world. We can now digitize and assimilate the files of CUFOS and NICAP, which when combined with the Pandora and Stringfield data will constitute the most amazing assembly of researchable UFO data ever developed in other parts of the world. Vast amounts of data does exist with our friends in Europe and South America. So we will be reaching out to these organizations and inviting them to join with us in this worldwide effort to develop the most comprehensive collection of UFO data literally on the planet. There are a myriad of projects on the agenda, and it will take an immense effort to put them all into practice. And we could not do that without all those people who support us, with our members, our state directors, our state officers, our certified field investigators, our staff, and supporters like you loyal supporters of the UFO phenomenon. So if inclined, please go to MUFON.com and support Project Aquarius. If you haven't joined MUFON, this is why I'm here. As the MUFON's director of membership, I would like to invite you to join today. When you join, you will receive either an electronic or hard copy monthly journal, and our journals are literally coveted. We have articles by leading ufologists, UFO sighting reports, abduction cases, symposium information, one-on-one interviews with people in the know, mutilations, different crop circles around the globe, and that's just to name a few. But it's so affordable, literally. It's only $59.88 for the entire year. So if you'll log on to MUFON, you can be a member with us. And if you're interested in going a little deeper and you'd like to become a field investigator, then you become a MUFON member first and go to MUFON.com and click join. It's really that simple. And we would encourage you to do so because there are so many people who are reporting things happening to them. And we need to have enough people always as volunteers to follow up. And some states are lacking and really need a lot of help. I know Arizona is a busy state, lots of sightings there. If you're watching us from Arizona tonight, we need you. So join us if you would. Now, if you are a member and you'd like to upgrade your MUFON membership to include MUFON TV, which is amazing, it's only $119.88 for an entire year, or you can choose to do a $9.99 a month for that. And we've always got different information that are special reports and things that we discuss, different areas within MUFON. We're always talking about those, interviewing people. It's so much fun. If you haven't joined, please do so. Oops, little glitch there on my clicker, sorry. Just go to MUFON.com. It does include your live stream for the MUFON Symposium, and that is probably the biggest deal of the century because you don't have to get a airline ticket, you don't have to get a hotel, you don't have to pay for your food or drive a car or rent a car. You can watch it from your couch in your jammies and enjoy your own coffee. So we would encourage you to do that and get that live stream. And we do have our 51st annual symposium coming up, and that will be August 27th through the 29th of 2021. So that's just next month. I'm already got my room and everything, my flight. I can't wait to get there. This is going to be such an amazing time. We've all been hunkered down for over a year, and we're ready to rock and roll and get together again as a MUFON family. So I would invite you to come if you can. And if not, there is online registration available. So please give that some thoughts. Here's who's going to be there. We have our beautiful MC, Katie Cook, and George Knapp, Nick Pope, John Burroughs, Kevin Day, Charles Halt, Robert Salas, Oscar Santamaria, Patrick Frascogna, James Goodall, Matthew Roberts, and Dean Smittle. So we do have a few other surprises in store. So we look forward to seeing you there. We also have a MUFON online store. I don't know if any of you have been to it, but you can get so many cute little extraterrestrial kinds of things, or the MUFON apparel that's emblazoned on shirts and different things. I have the Net Gator. I love it. I use it for many different things, staying warm in the winter and using it as a mask when I need to. So there's all kinds of hoodies and things like that. And if you're interested in one of our I Know MUFON shirts, then you would need to go to my website, dom@mufon.com, to order your shirt. And they're $20 each. And there is a $3 shipping charge on every one of those shirts. So it'd be $23 in total. And that's dom@mufon.com. Now, our next meeting that we'll have will be September 25th. And that'll be 2 p.m. Central Time, 3 p.m. Eastern, with Chris DiPerno. He is New York MUFON's Assistant State Director. I'm sorry, I put that up by mistake. I typed that in wrong, but he's the Assistant State Director, and Sam Falvo is the State Director. But we will have Chris DiPerno with us, and he has so much interesting to talk about. So we look forward to having him on as well. And to get to that, you would register just like you did here today. You know, go ahead and register for your the United MUFON for next month. So our curious stats here, people are always asking us, so what exactly do you guys report on? You know, what do you actually have in your stats? So I've made up this little board here for you to take a quick look at. A total of 675 UFO sightings were reported to MUFON from around the world. Now, that's just what's been reported. I'm sure there's tons more, but nearly 200 more sightings than last month. That's how much of an increase it's been. So I do think that having this little disclosure did help bring people into the understanding that we're not alone and something's going on. So these are the highest numbers reported, and they were reported 560 in the United States, 29 in Canada, 27 from the UK, and France 10. Now, those are not real numbers per se, because like I said, Canada, UK, and France are not necessarily giving us everything that's been reported, nor is that for the United States. These are just those who know about MUFON. So in the United States, California had the highest with 67, Texas with 36, and Florida with 35. Pennsylvania had 28, Washington 28, and Arizona had 17. So they're plenty busy. They'll get busier, I know. So our witness reports for June 2021, most impressively, the reports included 28 landings that were viewed, hovering or takeoffs, and 27 entities were observed, with 167 incidents less than 500 feet away. Now, the 27 entities, I will say that people are becoming more aware of what they're seeing and paying attention. So we go out, boots on the ground, and we do investigate every single one of these. And we usually go in twos, and we'll get back with you. Please come to our website at MUFON.com and check out what has transpired. There is sharing on our main website that you can check into, and we look forward to you doing that. That's why we're here. And it's finally that time. So today's presentation topic is the presentation of unidentified aerial phenomenon. And Shane Hurd is with us with Arizona MUFON. He's the Assistant State Director. He's also a author. And I've got a little intro I would like to read if you will allow me here. Shane Hurd has spent his government career in the fields of civil engineering, geographic engineering systems, information technologies, and is a graduate of Arizona State University's Certified Public Manager Program. As a member of the space race generation, he has been a lifelong space and science nerd and sci-fi geek. Good for you, Shane. It was the Phoenix Light incident in his hometown of Phoenix, Arizona, that sparked his interest in UFOs. Since that time, he has studied the subject, and ultimately in 2015, he joined MUFON, then became a field investigator in 2017. He is now a STAR team member and was recently appointed Assistant State Director for Arizona MUFON. In June of 2020, he published his first book entitled Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon, A Beginner's Guide to Researching UFOs. He is a musician, a car guy, amateur astronomer, horse owner, and enjoys a good bourbon now and then. Good for you. So welcome, and let me turn things over to you. I know you've got a lot to share with our folks today. Excited about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. I just want to start off by saying thank you very much for inviting me. And I want to just kind of reach out to everyone that's watching today. And if you're a MUFON investigator, I just want to thank you for your volunteerism. And I know that you share your personal resources, whether it's your time, your attention, money, all of those things. This is a volunteer organization. I just want to know that you're very much appreciated. I wanted to, let you know that it's the same thing all over the country and all over the world, that we are a family of MUFON investigators. We really help each other out, and it's all for such a worthy cause as that mission statement that Terry read indicates. So I'm very happy and excited to be here to share this with you. Let me go ahead and share my screen then if we're ready to start the presentation. And I am going to, right there, load that thing up. Let's see, make sure that works. All right, very good. Everyone, can you see the title page there? Unidentified Aerial Phenomena. All right, very good. Well, let me start out with just saying that this presentation goes hand in hand with my book, and it's not that I'm here pushing a book, it's that I use the book to sort of illustrate and outline the investigative process and the issues that exist within ufology. And the reason I did that is because, frankly, when the TTSA in 2017 basically released the Nimitz and the Roosevelt videos, we've probably all seen that mainstream media has begun to take it seriously. They're covering it. They're no longer playing X-Files music and giggling. And what it has done is really served to lift the taboo and the stigma of having an interest in this. And as a result, I felt that a lot more people are now going to outwardly engage and demonstrate an interest in this. And I wanted to help them to understand the big issues and avoid the pitfalls that can come with this very wonderful, frustrating, and crazy business of UFOs. Now, I'm going to take just about an hour of your time. We talked about my biography already here. And let me just kind of give you an introduction as to how I got here, as now the Assistant Director of Arizona MUFON. So as Terry mentioned, I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. I've lived here since 1980. In 1997, a very prominent UFO incident occurred that is now known as the Phoenix Lights. And though I had no awareness of UFOs prior to that, I was a young man growing up, raising a family, trying to get a career going, all those things. And I didn't really pay it much attention. And then in 2010, I happened across the book by Bill Burns and Philip Corso entitled The Day After Roswell. I was curious, and I was already developing an appetite for more information above just the casual UFO programs, which were on TV at the time, like the UFO Files. Remember that show? That was pretty well done. But then I also read Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials Go on the Record by Leslie Kean. And I highly recommend this book. It is among the most professional and cogent discussions on the topic of UFOs. And it really, helped me realize that there was something to this. And then I followed that up with Richard Dolan's powerful 2 volumes of UFOs and the National Security State. And once I read these books, I came to my first solid conclusion on the topic. And that is, there's a wide variety of information available. Some of it's dubious, some of it's plausible, and some of it is fascinatingly factual. But you kind of need to calibrate your BS meter when it comes to the issue of UFOs. However, I was convinced in the reality of the phenomena, something unexplainable is absolutely happening before our very eyes. So after several years of researching the topic, I got my hands on every book I could read, every video, DVD, you name it. I eventually recognized that, after acquiring this knowledge, I wanted to do more. I wanted to participate. I wanted to engage. I wanted to play. I wanted to have my own experiences rather than just reading about other people. And I know that as an individual who's been in government for, much of my career, I knew I could function in a organizational environment. And when I looked around, I saw MUFON, and that really gave me that opportunity. And so I did join MUFON. And after about 2 years of kind of, getting used to the information there and starting to connect with people on Facebook and via email and all of those things, then I eventually reached out to become an investigator. And now, of all things, I'm an author. I would never have thought in a million years that I would do that. But it just shows how exciting this topic is and how much there is to it. And if you're curious and you have a genuine interest, I encourage you to just, go full bore, read, talk to others, do everything that you can, because it's so fascinating. And I think we're living in a very, very special period of time right now. And we'll talk more about that. Now, let me say, some of what I'm going to say is my opinion, and my opinion is based on my personal experience, but I do focus on facts and evidence and proof. By nature, I'm skeptical, but I'm also open-minded. And I appreciate that other people have different experiences and opinions as a result, and that's perfectly okay with me. I completely welcome all other views. However, I will say, I reserve the right to change my mind because my experiences may differ. I may get more information. So today, if I say it's black, maybe tomorrow it's gray, but that's because I got more information. So let me just say that. So as you can see on the slide there, The Day After Roswell, that was the first book. This is Leslie Kean's book, Richard Dolan's, and then mine here as well. Now, let me go ahead and go to the next. What is UAP? Okay, so for anyone that's been around for a period of time, you know that this is a relatively recently used or popularized term. And it's sort of the new term used to describe what was formerly referred to as unidentified flying objects, or UFOs. Well, why the change? Well, the United States Air Force coined that term, unidentified flying object, in 1953. And its initial definition was this, now quote, any airborne object which by performance, aerodynamic characteristics, or unusual features does not conform to any presently known aircraft or missile type, or which cannot be positively identified as a familiar object, close quote. So simply put, an object in the sky that the viewer could not identify. It's a very clinical definition, and they did it that way so that it could allow terminology for them to, properly categorize reports that are made by the public. Now, over the years, though, that definition has actually been lost and a new unscientific context has been created. The term UFO soon became synonymous with flying saucer or alien craft, which ironically would be identified. So that misnomer contributed to the topic becoming considered unscientific and ridiculed, not only by scientific, government, military circles, and the media, but even the general public as well. And I think we're all familiar with that ridicule that comes with that topic. So there began to be a consensus that the term UAP should be used instead of UFO by both official and unofficial organizations and researchers. And I basically recommend the use of that terminology as well. Carries a little less stigma, and it's actually a more accurate representation of what's being seen. But we'll talk more about that. When you think about it, UAP has a broader definition that describes what's being seen in our skies and space more so than the term flying saucer or UFO. For example, if you're an investigator, there's a very common sighting type known as lights in the sky. Well, these lights, though they radiate in an unusual way or move in an unusual way, you cannot say that they represent a defined object. Or another example would be, I think we've seen where, the spirals in the sky and the blue color and those very unusual things. Again, not distinguishable as an object, but it certainly qualifies as an unidentified aerial phenomenon. And I think having a good understanding of the terminology and the political history behind it can help you in your research and investigations. And this topic of UFOs is very much about history, context, and other political influences. In fact, I say UFOs is really about people. It's our reaction to it. So get to know these contexts and how they influence the information that you're researching. But I will say clearly, many credible and serious people and organizations are expending a great deal of effort on the research of UAP. It is very serious business. Okay, let me go here. Now, earlier in the presentation, Terry had mentioned misidentifications. And misidentification of prosaic objects such as, astronomical features, aircraft, satellites, drones, all of that are very common. And some statistics indicate these objects account for around 85% of all reports. And I'm glad our percentages match there, Terry, in your opening, because some people dispute it. Some say it's more, some say it's less. But I think there were estimates that it's felt that only 1 in 10, and I think it's even higher, sightings are actually reported because people don't know where to report, or they don't want the embarrassment or ridicule. It could be 100 times more. So, but at any rate, I know in my body of cases, I've investigated between 100, 150 cases, and that 85% kind of is fairly accurate in terms of 15% unknowns and 85% are identified. So misidentification is a legitimate explanation for some UAP sightings. And even though Project Blue Book, conducted by the United States Air Force from 1952 to 1969, was not conducted in a formal scientific method, it did accurately identify some of the UAP sightings. Now, it is worth noting that they were mostly concerned with dismissing the phenomena to settle down, public interest so as not to incite panic, or to acknowledge that at the time, the United States Air Force had no control over that phenomena. So it wasn't an earnest effort to scientifically identify these things. Now, of the 12,618 cases in the report, all but 701 were identified as prosaic causes. Causes such as weather balloons, conventional aircraft, the planet Venus, lenticular clouds, and other natural phenomena. Sort of all the cliche stuff we hear about, but it's a cliche because, it is true, it is accurate. So the thing is, people can misidentify. Well, how or why can they do that? It doesn't mean that they're not credible individuals, but there are some definite explanations. So the first one I'll talk about is optical illusions. And those are caused by the eye and are characterized by visually perceived images that differ from objective reality. The information gathered by the eye is processed in the brain, and the brain gives a perception, and it may not match the physical environment. And really, optical phenomena fall into three categories. The first one being literal optical illusion, that create images that are different from the objects that make them. So you see something and it appears distorted or something like that, or the context is unfamiliar and you just can't identify it. Then there are physiological illusions that are the effects of excessive stimulation of a specific type. So you could be overwhelmed, your brain, by brightness or color or size or position or movement, things like that. And then finally, cognitive illusions, which really is the result of some kind of unconscious interference or inferences upon our thinking. And that, for example, hallucinations, things like that. Now, if we look at natural phenomena, we have to include things like, again, the whole classic planet Venus or the moon and lenticular clouds and other astronomical or meteorological phenomena. And those do represent a large portion of resolved cases. And the reason it can happen too is some of this phenomena is either rarely seen or never seen, or seen completely out of the normal context, which can be disorienting and result in a misidentification. I mean, I think of that spiral thing. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but that thing is just so weird and bizarre. I didn't even know where to start with that. So there are things like that out there. Now, man-made aircraft obviously have been misidentified as UAP. We think back to the development of the U-2 and the A-12 and other secret aircraft and stuff like that. So, that's legitimate. That does happen. So there's little doubt that airplanes and helicopters and balloons and drones and missiles and other things do account for many sightings, but not for all sightings. It's also worth mentioning that there are thousands of objects in Earth orbit. And sometimes you can see these with the naked eye or binoculars or telescopes. They might be active satellites, the International Space Station, SpaceX Starlink. If you've seen this, string of pearls thing moving across the sky, that's what that is, or simply space junk. Under the right conditions, it is possible that these sightings, these objects, are responsible for misinterpreted UAP. Now, in Project Blue Book Special Report 14, that's a mouthful, that was conducted by the Battelle Institute of the United States Air Force's Project Blue Book, a whopping 21.5% of UFO sightings were confirmed UFOs. Now think about that. That's 21.5%. And that's not a figure that you hear the debunkers or the disinformation folks tout. That is a sizable number. So after every other reasonable scientific and even some just made up stuff by assigning an explanation to a case by Project Blue Book, what we're saying is 2 out of 10 sightings were genuine unknowns or UFOs. And just think about it. If even one sighting was proven to be of an extraterrestrial source, our whole world would change. Now, isn't that enough, reason enough actually to take the subject seriously. I mean, people have been tried and convicted for murder on less evidence than that. Okay, I'm going to go to the next slide here, and we're going to talk about hoaxes. Now, hoaxes do in fact explain some UAP sightings, although people seem to give this explanation a lot of credence. But when you look at the statistics for that in, for example, the case management system for MUFON, it's a very low percentage that hoaxes account for these sightings. And when you think about it, it's because a couple of things. One, until recently, the only way to perpetrate a hoax was to lie or create a physical object and, you know, film it, throw it in the air, whatever, pass it off as a genuine object. That was difficult to do because with just a little bit scientific scrutiny and some common sense, the fraudulent nature of those lies or photos was usually exposed. However, now, more recently, with the invention and availability of computer software, an individual can create some pretty convincing CGI, computer-generated imagery, that to the untrained eye may appear valid. Although with scientific scrutiny, these two can also be identified as fraudulent. And we as MUFON investigators do that, you know, frequently. But sadly, today, many people will see a photo or a video on platforms such as YouTube or Facebook and not take the time to research and determine the validity of that photo or video. And even if you do exert that effort, it's very difficult to track down the source and certainly to verify the backstory or get the original, you know, file of the photo or video. So as a result, you know, the internet is just chock full of photos and videos and websites that are complete fabrications. So I just say, researcher, investigator, beware. And again, be skeptical, but be open-minded, right? Don't write things off, but do your due diligence. The thing about hoaxers that really irritates me, you can see in the slide, the definition of hoax: an act meant to trick or deceive, to cheat. Hoaxers do a disservice to all of us by creating sort of a boy who cried wolf effect that then causes all photo and video evidence to be doubted, you know? And it's a real shame because this can result in the loss of important scientific data and prevent serious scientists from studying the phenomena altogether. It also provides sort of a convenient, lazy, and illogical out for debunkers to basically claim, well, if one's a hoax, they're all a hoax, right? We've heard that. And, you know, sadly, many people, you know, they buy that, but it's just in fact not true. And I don't know anyone who likes to be tricked, deceived, or cheated. Do you? I don't think anyone would call that a good thing. There's nothing good about a hoax. Now, I'll say, you know, when people create, you know, interesting videos of UFOs, I don't have a problem with that as long as they're not trying to say it's real, right? I mean, there's some wonderful art out there and movies and, you know, all sorts of video, and it's very cool. But again, don't claim it to be the real thing or insinuate it if it's not. And that bothers me when I see that. And when you think about it, hoaxes are dangerous. They can result in dire circumstances for either those who have been hoaxed or even the people who do the hoaxing. Remember the whole balloon boy thing 10 years ago in Colorado where the family said they had this big UFO balloon and the little boy was in there and it went off and thousands of feet in the air. And then it turned out it was not true. He wasn't in there. He was hiding in the house. So people have lost a great deal because of hoaxes. Their money, their reputations, their integrity, their relationships, and very likely their very lives in some cases. So frankly, perpetrators of hoaxes are people doing, you know, a bad thing, not a nice thing. And the reason I take this so seriously from the perspective of a amateur researcher and investigator of the UFO phenomena is because I am personally searching for the truth. And in the world of UAP and its inherently ambiguous data, the last thing I need is some jerk trying to interfere with that search for the truth by lying, deceiving, and trying to cheat me out of it. All right. I wanted to talk a bit about the scientific method, and boy, Terry, we are on the same page of a lot of stuff, so that's terrific. The scientific method is a process in which science is performed, and it can build on previous knowledge and develop a more sophisticated understanding of its topics of study over time. So the overall process involves making an observation and then developing a hypothesis about that observation, and then, deriving predictions from them that appear would be a logical consequence, and then carrying out experiments based on those predictions to determine whether the original prediction was correct. So an example, first we figured out how to harness fire, and then we figured out how to harness electricity, and then finally nuclear energy, right? And that was a progressive thing over, hundreds or thousands of years, really. And so it's a process of building on prior knowledge and understanding. And so too with the study of UAP, there's a great deal of valuable data and knowledge amassed from past cases and studies and projects and reports. So we want to make good use of this data so that we can gain a greater understanding of the phenomena in general. Now, scientific inquiry generally tries to obtain knowledge in the form of testable experiments that can be used to predict the results of future experiments. This allows scientists to gain a better understanding of the topic and to use that understanding to kind of intervene in its causes. So the better the explanation is at making predictions, the more useful it is, and the more likely it is to generate a successful outcome. So again, the scientific theory and process is just essential in this effort. But here's the rub with the study of UAP. It's very difficult to even observe it. It happens randomly in a time and place of its own choosing, not ours. So how can you possibly replicate an observation, let alone, experiment or test it, right? But make no mistake, even though the media and popular culture often portray UAP as a joke, there are some very credible and serious people performing credible and serious science based on credible and serious evidence.
That's right.
Okay, so let me just say that finally, that I think the scientific method is the way in which we are going to yield both quantitative and qualitative data that can be taken seriously and will lead to a defendable theory or identification of UAP. And I understand not everyone is likely to be involved with the investigation of UAP. However, folks just, reading books and reports and documentation and other resources as they engage in the personal study of the subject is essential. And having an understanding of that scientific process is very important. Now, as an investigator, we all know that there are specific forms of evidence that are valuable and worthy and generate, an identification. And one of those first is eyewitness testimony. And people from all walks of life report UAP, and they're really among the most useful forms of evidence and data because they're the basis for the account, for understanding the circumstances and the context of a sighting or encounter. And that's where an investigation begins, the report of what was seen or experienced. So it is an absolutely vital, essential form of evidence, and really it's one of the pillars of evidence of an investigation. However, as you're probably already thinking, what about the reliability or credibility of a witness? Because somebody could be lying, or they could be delusional, or all of those things. Well, think about how we determine reliability or credibility, right? It might be someone that we know personally, someone with whom we've had dealings and they've exercised good judgment in the past. Another might be someone who's in a respected position in society, and their words and actions are available to view by everyone, and they're judged on that. So they're very careful to do that. Or it may be someone who has authority based on a certain technical skill or expertise or judgment. So let's look at a couple of those examples. As the slide shows, Police officers, they're persons who have been highly trained, certified, engaging in continuous training. They're constantly monitored for physical, for their physical capability or wellness and their mental health in the performance of their duties. They're placed in life and death decisions daily. They make good observations and the correct decision under pressure, you know. So though they're not trained as scientists or engineers, they have to be one among the most credible observers and witnesses around. And similarly, pilots, whether they be military, commercial, or private, they're also very credible witnesses. In fact, since aircraft themselves, flight dynamics, flight operations, takeoff, landing, navigation, meteorological conditions are all a part of the business of piloting, it's their life. They must be among the best witnesses of UAP as well. And can you imagine, you know, these are people that have the lives of hundreds of people in their care, and we're dependent on their skills and knowledge. And just think about maybe what they've seen in the skies over the thousands of hours and millions of miles of flying that they have done. Scientists, engineers, and technicians are also typically good witnesses since they've been trained in observational techniques, quantitative and qualitative analysis, data collection and review, and all that comes with the scientific method that I discussed earlier. They too are credible witnesses, although we've talked about they're disincentivized to do so by that same ridicule and persecution that we all face, including, you know, pilots and police officers. I think government officials also make credible witnesses, not due to their technical acumen, but because of the high risk of ridicule and persecution and the risk to their career. So if they do make a report, you can be pretty sure it's sincere and that they're not doing so in a glib way, and they've already weighed the potential consequences that could come their way before making any report. So I tend to think that those reports are credible as well. And of course, the same goes for military personnel, much like law enforcement and pilots as well. So as you research UAP or investigate, consider this form of evidence with caution. We have to consider the source and its credibility. It's not to say an average Joe is incapable of seeing and reporting genuine UAP credibly, and nor is it a guarantee that any of the ones I spoke about are always sound in mind and good judgment. Like any good investigator, you got to use multiple sources, consider all the evidence, and make sure that your BS meter is well calibrated. Trace evidence is an extremely valuable form of evidence if you can get it. It's rare, but it can be had. And it's in essence physical evidence or proof that at a minimum something physical occurred. And that is something that can be utilized in the scientific process. It can be measured and aggregated and otherwise used to develop a hypothesis. So those trace evidences come in many forms. It might be chemical residue, radiological residue, electrical effects on people or plants or on machinery, automobiles, for example. And then it may be damage to plants, animals, and even human beings, as we're starting to find out. They're studying the physical effects of UAP sightings on people who have had an experience. So that's very fascinating development. And then a quick word about photographic, video, and radar imagery. I would love to be able to say that, you know, a photo or video or radar would be, you know, not just evidence, but proof. But sadly, that's just not so. Those things are easily falsified or manipulated. But I think we can't summarily dismiss all photo, video, and radar imagery. I mean, in fact, if we ever do prove what it is, you know, I think imagery will be a part of that, right? If it's disclosed by the government, just like we're seeing with the videos put out by the TTSA and the DOD regarding the Tic Tac and the Go Fast and the gimbal. I mean, they're part of the story. Standalone, they're not enough, but with all of the other pillars of an investigation, the testimony, physical evidence, you know, it's very, very valuable. Okay. One of the things I'm going to kind of cut out much about our next slide here, classic cases. But I do want to make this point. Classic cases are very valuable. They have data that we can use that will help point us in the right direction. And each classic case is classic for its own reason. Some is because, you know, strong physical evidence like the Socorro case. And I encourage you to look these up, you know, on your own if you already haven't. The Phoenix Lights case contains video and photo evidence, you know, as well as eyewitness testimony. And it goes on, right? So any of those forms of evidence, these cases, you know, display at least one of these that make them classic. So I certainly encourage you to look at those. All right, I'm going to scroll down to my next slide. Let's see. And I guess you guys probably know the Travis Walton cases occurred here in Arizona, and it's one that's kind of near and dear to my heart. And unfortunately, there's a little bit of static going on regarding that, but it's a great case. I know Travis personally. I've interviewed him on stage. I've gone camping with him, and he seems like a very sincere gentleman, but you know, you be the judge. Okay, let's talk about briefly I'm going to talk about the wheat and chaff of ufology. So ufology, or the study of UAP, UFOs, that sort of thing, is really a world unto itself. Like any topic of study, you're going to have disagreement even among the experts, right? And there's many reasons for this. It might be differing data, differing opinion of what the data suggests, personal opinions, the influence of political forces, and the list just goes on. So the topic contains wheat-like good information and chaff-like bad information. And the bad certainly outweighs the good. Sorry, there we go. And the bad outweighs the good. But it's kind of like looking for gold. You got to dig through a lot of worthless ore to get to the gold nuggets. But correctly researching UAP, just like digging for gold, is really worth the effort. One just needs to develop the skills to separate that wheat from the chaff. For example, there is the intentional misrepresentation of the data, right? That this could be due to a desire of some person to generate income from clickbait presentations of either, you know, distortion of ambiguous data or outright just false information. Again, motivated by things such as greed or politics or desire for fame, as opposed to the search for truth. Then there's cases of disinformation, largely by government, military, and other officials, that is designed to either confuse, mislead, or in some other way interfere with the research, study, and presentation of legitimate UFO evidence. And there are some very well documented, famous cases, such as the Paul Benowitz case. There's also the United States Air Force Roswell report, and others where the government has been caught red-handed lying. So it happens. That's real.
Sure is.
Then there's the yeah, it's sad, huh? It's frustrating. Then there's the ever-present debunkers who seek to discredit people and information in ufology. And again, that might stem from a fear that there may actually be others, which, you know, interferes with their personal worldview or their scientific or religious belief systems. And they may be genuinely offended or fear the topic. Or they might have a career to protect, right? They may be just, you know, like to look like the smartest guy in the room. Or they might be wannabe scientists who shoot from the hip on social media, misapplying scientific terms and ideas to look smart. Or they may be assigned to obfuscate the UAP community by intelligent agencies. And folks, those people are real, and they've spoken at recent UFO conventions and stuff. So I'm not making that up. I won't name names right now.
Probably a good
Well,
idea.
how do you distinguish? Yeah, I want to pick a fight with the wrong people. So how do you distinguish then between what's legitimate and what's not? Like everything else, each of us needs to think critically. Don't take anything at face value, question everything and everyone. Be skeptical, assume falsehood, not truth, and work back from there. Excuse me, I say prove it or lose it. So when someone says, I know this or that, again, your BS meter should be pegging. The fact is, no one knows anything. Anything and everything in ufology is unproven. And don't get me wrong, there's a ton of good evidence that suggests unexplained phenomena exist. And this evidence is what we need to be interested in. And I always think of what, Stan Friedman always said that, 85% are identifiable. I don't care about theirs. I care about the 15% you can't identify. And then let me also say this. I'm not an experiencer, but I have the greatest respect for folks who have. And when I say we don't have proof, I mean proof in the public that everyone accepts that there are, others, right? But people have had an experience, I wasn't there. They were there. And if they had that experience and they know, then, that is entirely legitimate. And I just, have the greatest respect for those folks who, bravely come out and let people know about their experience. And I just can't state the amount of respect I have for them. Now, one refrain that often comes from many on social media and by the debunker crowd is the criticism of money and ufology. Now, I'm going to throw in a Bible reference here. It's often misquoted when it states money is the root of all evil. Actually, the quote is, the love of money is a source of many injurious things or evil. So do you see the difference? Money's not evil. The loving of it or improperly placing its value above all other things is what's wrong. And I make that statement just to illustrate, in order to accomplish literally anything of value in our lives, it takes money, right? I mean, think about it. In everyday life, we need money to live: food, clothing, shelter, transportation, fuel. Absolutely every necessity and anything we merely want has a cost. If a person is engaging in a legitimate and sincere effort to research the UAP topic, why is it some offense against humanity to earn money to do so, right? I think that's ridiculous. And another technique to undermine or otherwise discredit someone's sincere effort and expense, and is frankly the product of jealousy, self-loathing, or a small mind. Now, of course, there are examples of people who obviously exploit the topic for profit with no real conviction for the truth, and that's despicable and shameful. So again, just be balanced and, recognize that, it takes money to accomplish anything meaningful, including the study of UFOs. So again, have your BS meter calibrated so you can identify and avoid the chaff, which is also correctly identifying the wheat. Now, this next slide is pretty timely. The cover-up is real, right? So whether it's a family, a corporation, or a government, organizations have issues that they wish to keep private. And this is based on normal human logic and behavior. It's not necessarily a conspiracy, which is defined as a secret plan by a group to do something unlawful or harmful. No, creating and implementing a plan to accomplish goals for the organization, be it a family, group, or formal organization, is in fact not a conspiracy. It is a necessary step in managing said organization, is not intended to be devious, unlawful, or harmful. Now, a cover-up is generally thought to be an attempt to hide information to prevent knowledge of this information by others. Likely, the purpose is to provide or hide a failure, or to protect the organization from perceived harm, or maybe even to control others. And it can either stem from a positive or a negative motivation, right? It's important to have a correct understanding of this definition to intelligently discuss the cover-up of UAP information held by governments, private companies, or individuals. And I wanted to make that distinction because the topic of governmental cover-up can be interpreted as a conspiracy. And while conspiracies do exist, the fact is that cover-up can be both legitimate or illegitimate based on the sensitivity of the information and the motivation of the coverer. So there's no doubt the United States government and other governments of this planet do cover up the information that has been accumulated regarding UAP for decades. We must admit there are legitimate reasons for not sharing some of that information or covering it up, right? So we're seeing this play out right now with the release of the DOD report from the UFO task force, right? UAP task force. And intelligence agencies do need to protect the identity and methods of intelligence gathering techniques, sources, and personnel. And if a UAP report involved those facets of that information, then covering that up would be legitimate, right? So an appropriate response by the government, though, would be to make the report available but redact the sensitive or secret information to protect those methods and individuals. What would be illegitimate is to cover up the entire report altogether, right? We can see that difference. So we're all quite aware that our government has classifications of information that range from public, sensitive, secret, and even top secret. And there's apparently even more above that, right? And again, it's not to engage in nefarious things, but it's just a logical and necessary way of managing information. And since Blue Book was terminated in 1969, we were told by our government they were no longer interested in UFOs. They weren't real. They didn't pose a threat, any of that. Well, we all know that's utter BS, right? The US government continued to be interested and studied it all along. They simply moved the classification from public to secret to get it out of the public's eye. And I think we're all familiar by now with the ATIP, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, that existed from 2000, I think it was 7 through 2012. And the government got caught red-handed, basically, not doing what they said. So cover up then can be legitimate or illegitimate. And the thing is, we know it's very, very real. I'm going to just briefly touch on the next side, the political science of ufology. Now, one of the most fascinating papers I've ever read is entitled Sovereignty and the UFO by Alexander Wendt and Raymond Duval. I highly recommend you read this if you can. It's such an interesting and different point of view looking at UFOs. It just blew my mind when I read it, and it gave me really great confidence that if we get this topic into the hands and minds of true scientists, we are gonna figure this thing out. So I highly recommend you read that paper. But I'll just briefly state what they actually, kind of the theme of it is. They talk about anthropocentrism, or that is human focused. And the thing is we can't help it. We're anthropocentric, which means we think like humans and we act like humans. And there's nothing we can do about that. So, we often see ourselves projecting our thinking upon, aliens. We think, oh, why are they here? Are they just scientists studying us? Or are they planning an invasion and blah, 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 all these things? Well, frankly, it could be completely different, not anything like any of that, nothing that we can even imagine. But those are the reasons that we do those things and how we would act. And so that we end up projecting that on people. And so their point is really about how the governments behave regarding UFOs. They behave this way for a reason. And let me just give you a little bit of a shot of what they said here. It says that we see and interpret everything from our point of view. This is logical, but can be limiting and accounts for some of our myopathy. Went Duvall explained it this way. They say, imagine a counterfactual world in which God visibly materialized, as in the Christian second coming, for example. To whom would people give their loyalty? And could states in their present form survive? Were such a question politically salient? Anything that challenged anthropocentric sovereignty, it seems, would challenge the foundations of modern rule. Is that not a fascinating thought? If aliens came here, benevolent or not, they would clearly be more powerful than humans. Who would humans ultimately follow? The inferior human rulers, or ruled by beings with godlike powers, right? Governments consider UAP as a potential threat to their sovereignty because the answers to the question of what or who UAP is may reveal a power greater than state. So UFOs are considered an existential threat to any government. Had you ever even considered that possibility? I didn't. I thought that was so fascinating. And I include a whole chapter in my book regarding this because I just find it so interesting. Go ahead. Oh, thanks, Terry. So the political science discussion really impacted me, and I've always asked the question, why? It is the very thing that has driven me to become a researcher of UAP topic. Why is there illogically a denial, even an aversion to seek the answer to the questions that nearly all people ask, right? We ask, who are we? Why are we here? What does the future hold? Are we alone? What are these, or who are these others, and from where do they come? Do they mean us harm? I mean, I think it's utterly ridiculous, but now more easily understood, why this government taboo has been happening. It is essentially the government's fear of losing its sovereignty.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, freaky.
Those are very interesting questions. Sure.
Yeah, they really are. So I've just got about 15 minutes here, and I'm going to talk a little about following the evidence, because this is sort of the conclusion of where we've come through. We've gone through these slides and this process. So I'll say this, based on the evidence that I know I have seen, the conclusion I come to so far is this: while there may not be the kind of proof available to the public that everyone would accept, there is a preponderance of evidence to suggest something very real is happening. And I wrote this book basically 2018-ish, and it was before really all the traction with the TTSA and those 3 videos really hit the public. And now I think there is a greater level of proof available. But here's the thing with proof, well, I'll talk more about that in a minute. I'll just say that the UAP enigma is such that there is no certainty yet of what that big picture may be. Now, we definitely know some things. We know some details. However, we are left with no choice but to actually follow the evidence wherever it leads us. So how do we draw any conclusions from the evidence? One thing we have to do is first look at our own bias. And I think this relates back to anthropocentrism, but this is more now on a very personal level. Essentially, belief is the acceptance of something as true without the proof. That's essentially the definition of that. And belief is a necessary function of human intelligence and logic. It's part of the natural process of learning. So think about it. In religion, we believe in the existence of an almighty God, for example. In science, we might believe in scientific theories and very specific ones until they're either proven or disproven, right? So even like with physics right now, you hear all this stuff, but half of it is just, it's theory, but people assume it's fact, but it's not. It's just theoretical. And any scientist will tell you whatever we say today, you know, is factual, may change tomorrow with updated information. And that's what life is for us, right? It's discovery of the unknown. Now in business, we might believe in specific management theories. So belief is necessary, and it's really the bridge between the gaps of what we think is true and then what is later proven true, right? So it moves us along, it moves our society along. It helps us accomplish, it motivates us, and it gives us emotional support and many other things. However, there's also a danger with belief. Human beings tend to allow belief to rise to the level of truth when they don't really have the proof or the evidence. And it can be problematic and even dangerous. Humans can allow belief to be superior to proof. Yes, truth is often denied in the face of strongly held beliefs. That can happen. I've heard that there are 3 stages of truth. First, it's denied. Then it's ridiculed and violently opposed. And then finally, it's accepted as self-evident. Well, does this not apply to UAP as well? The truth of the reality of UAP is going through these stages. First, it was vehemently denied, that there's no such things as UFOs, they say. Then secondly, there are cases of ridicule and violence, even verbal, political, towards UFO researchers, abductees, witnesses, and whistleblowers. That's the danger that can come. And more people, including scientists and government officials, law enforcement, intelligence, military, everybody is beginning to accept UAP as a reality. Well, the fact is, it is. We have the videos to prove it. We have the government, the Navy, the DOD acknowledging, yes, there is some unexplainable thing that we are dealing with, and we're now prepared to acknowledge that. So again, I think we're in a very wonderful time. Now, I know personally as a MUFON investigator, I'm very careful to separate belief from proof in my mind as I research the phenomena. I really avoid falling into the belief category. And the reason is I don't want to be wrong. I mean, it's too important to take that risk. In the end, this may be the greatest discovery in the history of mankind. And it may even rise to to a matter of life and death, right? So I want to make sure if I'm out there speaking to folks and, you know, I want them to know, hey, this is my opinion, or this is a proven fact. You know, we need good information so that we can make good decisions as individuals. And I try to avoid all bias when it comes to an investigation. I try and go into a clean slate, my heart, my mind, so that I really operate off of facts as much as possible. When you think about it, we have the power as an investigator to affect an individual's well-being, right? People make a report, they might be emotionally distraught, they might be traumatized, you know, and we want to make sure that we treat them with the proper care and respect that they deserve. And we need to be balanced and unbiased while also being compassionate and treating our witnesses with dignity and respect. And I just say, consider this. Many people who already believe in the reality of UAP, aliens, and other facets of UAP without proof. And as I mentioned earlier, this is a normal part of human intellect and our logical process, and it's not necessarily wrong. But again, we have to be careful not to place this belief above proof. And if you do that as an investigator, you could actually miss some really important facts because we're just not looking because we think we already know. So that's a caution I always apply to myself. Now, I don't criticize believers because they may have more of a reason to believe than I. They may already have what they consider proof. Maybe they saw a flying saucer with their own eyes. I know that would make me a believer, Maybe they've been abducted or contacted or otherwise have an experience. I wasn't there, I don't know, so I can't say that they're wrong. I remain open-minded and humble when it comes to these experiences. Now, people are sometimes called true believers, and that's used in a pejorative sense, right? And, you know, you can invite ridicule even from fellow ufologists, because sometimes those folks demonstrate an unreasonable level of gullibility that can damage their own credibility or really the credibility of the UFO community. Credibility has always been a hard to come by commodity for the UFO community in the view of the general public. And I think that's a valid concern. We need to think not only of ourselves, but as of ourselves as a community. And as a member of the UFO research and investigation community, you and I do have a responsibility to carry out our work in an objective and well-balanced way. So the most effective way to manage the credibility, in my opinion, is to follow the evidence. No one can justifiably refute a proven fact, right? If you have a proven fact, then by all means, stand up, thump your chest, and crow. However, when it comes to belief or assumption or theory or some other unproven information, just proceed more carefully. Openly acknowledge when this is of that nature, right? Only theoretical or an opinion. And then follow the evidence and skillfully use it to make a point. Use reason and logic and place the emphasis on the data, on the evidence, and ultimately the proof. So I just want to conclude with this. I want to say that this is one of the most interesting and important topics in our lifetime. Many more people are going to want to know much more than they have been told, right? And I hope this discussion and my book, Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, A Beginner's Guide to Researching UFOs, will help you and others in your search for that truth. Thank you. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Yes, let's do that. That was really interesting. I love how you went to the uttermost farthing on all of those different, points that we talk about on a monthly basis here at United MUFON, but you really took it out to the end, and I love that. Very thorough. You're doing your due diligence, and very proud of you. So yeah, let's go right and out to the people, and I'm sure they have some questions for you. And let's open the mics. It's wonderful. And don't be shy out there. If you have a question, please ask it. I'll put my glasses on so I can see.
Yeah, I repositioned my camera a little better.
Okay. While we're waiting for people to get up the gumption to ask, because a lot of times, So you got started in ufology. Was it 2015, did you say?
I think I would say in 2010, I began an earnest research, but it did take me, about 5 years. I mean, again, I was in the midst of my career. I also was afraid of the taboo. I didn't tell anyone I had the interest. My wife knew and my immediate family, but I kept it on the down low. But by the time, I got to about 2015, I was ready to say, well, by that time I'm 55 years old and I kind of don't care what people think of me anyway. You get that attitude the older you get. And I just said, you know what, this interests me. There's something real to it. I'm going to pursue it. And so, as I mentioned, I thought MUFON was an organizational, a structured entity that could move a topic forward, right? Because if I'm just a dude on Facebook and, trading ideas with people, that's good, that's fun, that's interesting, but it doesn't, accomplish a whole lot. I wanted to, accomplish something. And so that's why I was drawn to MUFON and ultimately investigation.
Good. I'm surely glad that you did, and I know many of us are.
Thank you.
So, do we have any questions before I go any further?
Alice wants to know why he finds Philip Corso's story so credible.
Oh, Alice, did you hear that? Alice wants to know why you find Philip Corso's story so credible.
I actually, I guess I didn't speak clearly on that. That was the first book I read, and I actually have concerns about the credibility in that book. And in fact, I almost quit there, but then I had read Leslie Kane's book, and that put me back on track. And let me just say, again, with, there, I'm sure, well, I don't know. I'll just say that I found credibility issues there and I'll just say in a very general way, I just find it hard to believe that something so important was handled in that manner, like kept in a metal file cabinet and doled out kind of willy-nilly. It just didn't seem like a credible thing. But you know what? That was the late 40s, early 50s, or I guess
that was a few years, yes. And there was a big
things are different
challenge for people back in those days to come forward because your credibility was literally on the line. There was
absolutely.
Time.
I do agree with your.
So I don't want to disparage them, Bill Burns or Mr. Corso. I'm not. I'm just saying, for me personally, that didn't ring as true to me as other things I have read since that time.
I think I'm on the
I
same
hope that
page.
answers it.
I'm on the same page. Thank you for your answer.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right.
Juan wants to know, are we free civilians making effort to make contact?
Okay, could you hear that? Juan, in our listening room, are we as free civilians making effort to make contact? Your thoughts?
Yeah, there is something called CE5, Close Encounters 5. It's a methodology. I think it was started by and is proffered by Dr. Greer, and it's a methodology in which people get together and they try to call UFOs in to have an experience with them. CE5. So there definitely is an effort by free civilians to make contact. And again, I'll just go back to, that's cool, that's fine. I think it, potentially works and everything. However, the problem with it in terms of, here's the thing. Most people are only going to accept the president coming to the podium and saying, we are not alone. That is the only proof many people will accept. They're not going to accept proof from Dr. Greer or MUFON or, that's just the reality of the world in which we live. So I think having that contact and those experiences, great for people that want to do that. I would not look for it to be a way to bring forth a true disclosure. Let's just put it that way. And not because of them or the process, but because of people and how they interpret it.
Right. And unless they had very good resources, video, pictures, that sort of thing. It can happen. I have been in groups where that has happened and I have had an experience, a very powerful one, but that doesn't happen all the time. And not anybody can just call them in. I don't know. Like you. I only talk about the things I'm positive about, and I know because it's a personal thing. And I think that's where we really all should come together is from personal knowledge and actual factual happenings that we've all had to live through and wrap our minds around, because it is a very heavy subject and it affects us all so very differently. We all have different backgrounds, religious backgrounds, some of us aren't religious at all. And so, we're all looking at this from very different sides of the beach ball, so to speak, So it's a very interesting concept when we all come together. Sometimes it's actually hard to agree, but what I love about it is that we are free to agree to disagree. And I think in the I just read somewhere today, I think it was on Facebook, how ufology is just not supporting each other anymore. You know, they're having, this one thinks this and this one thinks that, and you know, there's so many differences of opinions. Well, of course there are. We're in the thousands, millions of us, you know, of course there's going to be differing opinions. But if we can stick with the facts, you know, like Joe used to say, what was that guy? Columbo or somebody, just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. You know,
yeah.
It's a,
yeah.
Do we have any other questions?
I'd just like to make a comment. I know 2 different Catholic sisters who have had UFO sightings. I've known them for a long time. One is in her 80s, one is in her 60s. They're not crazy. They're, you know, one's a school teacher, one's a psychologist. I find their credibility to be very high, but they're very careful to whom they speak about it.
Yes. Have they reported?
A lot of people don't realize.
MUFON? Oh, sorry. Could you hear me? I'm not sure who we were talking to there.
Was Shane going to say something?
Oh, I had asked you, had they reported their experiences at all to MUFON?
They would never do that because they don't want that kind of attention.
And that's a good point to make. You know, a lot of people are very private, and that's wonderful, great. You know, it takes all kinds to make a world. And not everybody that has had powerful experiences, great and wonderful experiences, very valid people, they will not share, except with a few close loved ones, what has happened to them. And we totally get that. We totally get that. Shane, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of people aren't aware that the Catholic Church has officially addressed this issue, and they don't know that, you know, the Vatican has its own astronomer, and they have telescopes across the world. And in fact, one of them is located here in Arizona, and it's operated by the Vatican. And their official position on the issue, I thought, was absolutely brilliant, because, you know, I was a member of a religion for very, very many years, 40 years of my life, though I'm not at the current time. I know that, you know, religions, or people feel that religions might struggle when it comes to, you know, if we ever identify that there are others. I thought the Catholic Church was absolutely brilliant, because what they said when the question was posed to them was, well, we would be happy to baptize them too.
Right.
I mean, how simple and direct is that? You don't have to come up with a big, long, you know, theological explanation of this and that. You know, are we going to limit, you know, God's creativity? No, I don't think that's our role. And so, I mean, it was so simple, but to me, so powerful and effective. And it just completely sidestepped what other religions are no doubt going to struggle with. And but I also understand the position of those 2 sisters, and you know, because not everyone in an organization thinks the same, right? Even if the organization has a specific policy, many of the people might not agree with it, and they'll just keep quiet about it and so forth. But, you know, again, it goes down to what you were saying earlier, is it, this is, again, it's about people, and it can be very personal. And, you know, what it is to me is different than what it is to you, and so forth. So that's why I think respect is absolutely vital. And I do like the varying opinions. In fact, I would probably run if everybody was singing the same song when it came to UFOs, because and the reason is the evidence. UFOs themselves present in very different ways under different circumstances to different people. There is something that we don't understand about that yet, but we can at least identify that. So who's not to say that my explanation is correct for me and your explanation is correct, what has been presented to you, right? So
Right.
again, I go back to, if anybody's running around here saying, I know what this is and what this is all about, run, because they don't know. They think they know, but they don't, right? So I think it's just important for us all to have respect for each other and our personal views on it. But we can agree to disagree. That's easy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
I could tell you the more compelling of the two stories briefly, if you have time for it.
sure.
This is from
Yeah,
the
we have 10 minutes.
This
Um,
one
I'm asking-
happened.
Plenty of time.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I just thought I was interfering with somebody. This one happened, I believe, in the 60s. It was the older sister. She was a grade school teacher in a small rural town. And she used to visit regularly the home of one of her students and his mother. She was a widow. And the young man claimed, by this time he was no longer a student, he was older, but he claimed that he had mental contact with beings on flying saucers. And she said she would just let him talk because, she didn't know what that was all about, but she didn't want to be critical and she didn't want to put him ill at ease by criticizing him
Right.
or questioning him. She just let him talk. And she said she was out visiting at the farm one day when he said, well, there's a saucer nearby right now and it's going to land. Do you want to see it? And they were like, well, yeah. So they go to the front porch and it came in just as he predicted it would. It landed on a distant field and it was there only briefly and then took off again. She saw both the landing and the takeoff.
Wow.
And then he said, well, let's go run out there and look at the spot where it landed. And there was a circular imprint on the ground.
Wow. That's
Now,
an awful exciting.
that turned her into a believer. But then
That
she chuckles. She said she went home and told the other sisters what happened, and they didn't believe her. And they just started teasing her about that. But she laughs, it didn't bother her that they didn't believe her. But she said that night when she went up to her bedroom, they had made a little tinfoil flying saucer that they put on her bed.
oh Lord.
But she has since had a nephew disappeared mysteriously without a trace.
Oh no.
He was in his car, but he disappeared. His car disappeared. Neither was heard from again. And their whole family believes an alien abduction was possible because all of her family members, she told her story to her family members and they believed her because they knew she wasn't a kook. So now that whole family is kind of open to lots of UFO stories and abduction stories that they probably wouldn't have been open to before.
It's a shame that she won't come forth with that story because, having to live in ridicule is very difficult. I had to do it for many years until all of a sudden I knew what I knew. And coming to MUFON helped me so much because you always wonder, what happened to me? Why did this happen? I didn't want this. I wasn't looking for this. I didn't even believe it. My story was, I always thought it was comic book entertainment. And then there it was, so it's so wonderful to have validation and to have people who understand where you're coming from and don't look at you like a nut or make you any little tinfoil hats. That hurts. That hurts because it's your credibility on the line, and they're not necessarily calling you a liar, but maybe they're calling you somebody who hallucinates or hears voices or sees things. And all of that could very well be true. And it might not be that it's phony. It can very well be factual. So if you ever get to talk to them again, encourage them, but We respect everybody's right to be private and quiet, but it's wonderful to hear stories from credible people like her and her sister. That's an awesome testimony right there. Did anybody else have any questions?
You were corrected. It was not Colombo. It was Joe Friday.
Yes, I thought I was right when I said Joe. It was Joe Friday, not Colombo. And that was the director's fault, not mine. Well, I guess if we don't have a lot of other questions, I did want to ask you, Shane, about the boot camp in Arizona. That has been the most wonderful event. I can't say hats off enough to the MUFON people who have devoted so much time to all the training and teaching, and boy, they go way above and beyond. You want to tell us a little bit about your involvement in that?
Yeah. So we've been putting on the boot camp for the last 3 years, and I think about 40 people are able to participate. It's a 3-day event where, what we do is everyone flies in on Friday evening. We have a nice get together and hang out and stuff, and everybody checks in at the hotel, all that. And then Saturday we go out and we spend half the day out into the desert in the most beautiful mountains called the Superstition Mountains, and they're just gorgeous. But we go out there and we have field training, and we've had Chase Klotsky train us on forensic site, processing a site. And then for the last 2 years, or last year and this year, we're going to have the Navajo Rangers, John Dover and Stan Milford. And they have, they're just impeccable. The training that they've had and the experiences they have. They are federal law enforcement personnel who have been designated to investigate paranormal, including UFOs. And their experiences will blow your mind. But in addition to that, they also have federal training on processing a crash scene and things like that. So the training is really about that, how you process a site. And then in addition to that, we have a big barbecue out there. And then in that night, we have a sky watch, because this is kind of in the middle of nowhere and it's just as dark as can be. And then we have half-day in-class training, and we have topics like certain cases and how to perform a case quickly and efficiently. We have parts discussing on all the tools that we utilize in the investigative process.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, I hear
these are really specific and helpful.
You need a field investigator to be a part of that training, not just a member, yes. Correct? You have to be a certified
Correct.
Field investigator. Okay, I thought so.
Or well, if you are becoming an investigator, you can still attend. It's really 40 people, first come, first serve. It includes people who are in the process as well as experienced investigators. Yeah,
well,
and we've had people from all over the world. I mean, people from, I think, New Zealand and Australia and blah, 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 and then all over the country as well. It's been fascinating, and it's just so fun, and the camaraderie that you get, and this really specified, intense instruction, both classroom and field, it's just so invaluable. So yeah, it's really a great thing, and I'm very proud to be part of it, and that we're able to offer that here in Arizona. So if you're interested, October, I think 8th, 9th, and 10th November 8th, 9th, and 10th, I think it is this year, but they might be full up, or there might be 1 or 2 slots left.
Oh, how I would love to. My schedule is usually so busy, but one of these days I will get to one of those, because I just think it's awesome. I do really want to be part of that. Is it pretty cool in November in Arizona?
It's reasonable. Let's put it that way. It can be warm, but it's nothing like the summer heat. So that's why we do it in November, because it's really the start of the cooler season. But the weather's still good.
Oh, that's good. So, how many cases do you think you would do yourself in a month in Arizona? Are you inundated? Do you feel like you have enough help, or are you looking for more field investigators?
Yeah, I mean, we're always looking for more investigators. We probably have about 20 on the books, but with life, any given time, 5 or 6 or 7 people may not be available, vacations and illness and things like that. But, and my role is I train a lot of the new investigators. So like last month, I probably had 4 cases. We get, about a case a day in Arizona, so 300 to 350 a year. And then we mix that up between, a dozen or so investigators. So everybody gets, at least 1 to 2 cases a month and some more depending on the circumstances. Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice, because that's when you really learn, is when you're hands-on and boots on the ground, when you are buddied up with somebody, and the things that you learn are just priceless. And I tell people, your life will never be the same once you become a field investigator, because you go through so many changes. You meet so many interesting people. And it seems like your mind just opens up, and you're able to interact with those that you wouldn't have thought that you could have, so it's really wonderful. Well,
Yeah,
do we have
your
any other?
observation skills.
I'm sorry, there's a little bit of a delay. So sometimes I'm talking and I apologize.
No worries.
Thank you. Was there anybody else who had any questions? Can't really hear you.
Do you have your books online at Arizona MUFON website?
Yeah, but you can go just directly to Amazon. You can type in my name or the title of the book. I think it's $14.95 for paperback, and then $5 or something for the Kindle version. But yeah, thank you for asking. I didn't mention that. It's available on Amazon.
All right, thank you.
Great. And if people wanted to get in touch with you, they would just go to phoenixmufon.com.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be passed on.
Shane, or it'd be Shane at phoenixmufon.com.
Shane.
And I'm out there on. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, I had an interesting question for you. I'm Gary. I'm in South Dakota. Now, I've been training as an FI, and I try to read as much as I can, but I've got other projects on too. But I try to commit at least twice a week to this. But there was a thing on Amazon Fire Stick, and it was about the Phoenix Lights encounter. It was a movie or something. I didn't know if it was science fiction or for real, but they said those 2 boys had disappeared in the desert and had never been found, and they had video footage of these aliens like chasing after them and stuff. I don't know if that was real or not.
I'm familiar with what you're speaking about. There was a movie made, and the movie maker came to the UFO Congress, and I think this was 2017 or 18. And they profiled the movie and they gave us a sneak peek. And it was a fictional movie based on the Phoenix Light incident. And they went so far as to, they got a billboard here in Phoenix and put up basically a false ad, but it was like, have you seen these 4 people? They disappeared during the Phoenix Lights incident, blah, blah, blah kind of thing. And they had a website set up that you would go to that made it look like it was real. but that was fictional. Definitely. There was, in fact, there's 2 movies like that now made based on it. So there was not missing persons directly related to that incident as far as I'm aware. But, you know, it was a good movie. Yeah, it's kind of a monster movie, I'd say. Yeah.
Hey Shane, this is Jesse, field investigator from Pennsylvania.
Hey, Jesse.
I just had a question. I'm looking to write a book in the field on some vast topics in the UFO field. And I'm just wondering if you had any pointers for some first steps that I should take, you know, editing and getting a publisher and, you know, how to go about that.
Yeah, I have a very good friend who's in the UFO journalism, and his name is Jason McClellan. And he has a website called Rogue Planet TV, and you may have seen him on TV before.
Very familiar.
Yes, he actually wrote the introduction to my book, and he helped me publish it. We did self-publishing on Amazon. It was awesome, excellent, inexpensive, and has really been a real treat. Now, it's limiting. If you want a greater distribution and other perks, that you get a publisher, you know, but that takes a lot more time and money and so forth. But if you have a person that can edit for you and verify your work and that kind of thing, that's about all that you're going to need. But I will say one thing: include footnotes and do those as you write. Because if you come back later and do them, it's really hard. So when writing a book, do your footnotes, along the way, not after. So that would be my biggest tip in terms of writing it.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Shane. I appreciate that.
You're
Helps
welcome.
a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for all your hard work.
Yes, thank you. And
Good
you
luck
too.
with the book.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome seeing other people with MUFON. It's just great to be able to pick each other's minds, you know, so to speak, and hear what's going on and get to know one another. Then when you show up at the symposium, you know each other.
Yeah.
So that's a beautiful
Yeah, can't
thing.
wait.
I know, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
So is that it on questions? Is this the end of our meeting? Do we have any more questions? Well, I guess I'll take that as a no. I want to thank you so much for being on today with us. This has been so informative, and I took some notes. You did such a great job, and I look forward to reading your book. I want a signed copy, however.
Thank you. Yes, I'll bring them to the symposium. How's that? But thank you. And thank you for having me. And I kind of whipped through it fast. I know there's a lot and you just kind of blah, but there's so much to the topic, and
Yeah.
you know, there'll be more thorough discussion in the book. But I just hope that everyone has such an enthusiasm and love for the topic, because it's really deserving. It really is. It's just a fascinating topic, and again, I think people alive today are in a very unique position that we potentially, can see this enigma solved in our lifetime, and that would just be so satisfying. So
Absolutely. I do think it's very possible, we're getting closer all the time. And I've said this many times, even though our government and our presidents don't come out and say what they know, if they know anything, one-on-one extraterrestrials have reached out to people across the world, and experiencers, they have so much to contribute. And I actually wrote a book on Amazon myself. I made it very inexpensive so everybody could afford it. And it is a experience that I went through that was quite horrifying in one way and amazing in another. But it's also on Amazon, and it's about an alien healing that I had in 2012. And you can find many different things that I have been a part of on terryling.com. It was before I had gotten married, and I had several different experiences over the years, hundreds of them actually, and I wrote down about 150 of them and shared them on that, mostly for my children. The reason I did that blog was for my kids, so that if weird things happened to them as they got older, they would be able to say, well, you know, something like this happened to grandma, or something like this happened to great grandma, you know, and that way we know. My mother had experiences that she never told me about. She was a very strong Catholic and didn't share her experiences. She was a private person. And so when I finally brought my experiences to her, she shocked me by saying, yes, I know. This is true. This was my reason for doing this ultimately, but then it snowballed. So terryling.com has a lot of those experiences on it. But thank you all for coming today. And we have our symposium coming up in August, and I hope you can all make it. I look forward to seeing you there. And that's the 27th through the 29th. So thank you for joining us today, all of you that have spent this time with us on your Saturday. We appreciate you. Have a really great night. And don't forget, September 25th, we've got Chris DePerno, New York MUFON Assistant State Director, joining us. And he is the one that is going to be talking about the museum in Pine Bush that they've started in New York. So we really want to talk to him about all of that. It's so interesting. So we'll see you next month on the 25th. Have a great week. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Jane.